She lived a life that seemed quiet to most people. She woke up early, made her coffee, and walked to the small job she had. It was not something she loved, but it kept her going. She smiled at her coworkers, answered questions politely, and did her work. No one knew much about her, except that she was always calm, always careful, and always seemed to be in her own world. She liked it that way. Life had taught her that keeping herself small made things easier. Her apartment was tiny, with just a few pieces of furniture. A small bed, a table, a chair, and in one corner, a piano that she never really touched. At least, not in front of anyone. The piano was old, a bit worn, but she had loved it once. The keys had stories hidden in them, stories of afternoons filled with music, laughter, and sometimes tears. But that had been long ago, before life became a series of routines and responsibilities. Most days. She came home, made a simple dinner, and read or watched something on her small television. Music was there in the background, on the radio or her phone. She hummed along sometimes, tapping her fingers on the table, remembering melodies she had played years ago. But the piano stayed silent. It felt like it belonged to a different life. A life that was hers, but also not hers. She wasn't sure anyone would understand it now. Sometimes, she looked out of her window at the streets below. Children laughed as they ran home from school. Neighbors waved at each other and life moved quickly. She felt like an observer rather than a participant. She wondered if anyone noticed how quiet she really was. How many thoughts passed through her mind every day. Music had always been her way to express those thoughts. But now she kept them locked away. Her friends, few as they were, sometimes invited her out. She smiled and said yes, but often felt out of place. The laughter and conversation felt heavy. She longed for something simpler, something real, something that could speak for her when words failed. That something had been music. And yet, she did not touch the piano. She could not. It was as if fear and doubt had wrapped around her fingers, keeping them from playing. She remembered her first piano lesson. She had been so small, sitting on the tall bench, looking at the keys as if they were a puzzle waiting to be solved. Her teacher's eyes had sparkled when she played a simple scale perfectly. She had felt pride, pure joy, and something magical had happened. Music had become a friend, a secret world where she could escape and feel powerful. She could create something beautiful from nothing. The piano was an extension of herself, and yet it demanded everything from her. Years passed. Life moved in ways she did not expect. Family matters, school pressures, friendships that came and went, and small disappointments piled up. She stopped going to lessons, thinking she had other things to do, other priorities. The piano stayed in her corner, silent and patient, waiting for her to return. Sometimes she would sit near it, fingers hovering over the keys, but fear held her back. What if she wasn't as good as she remembered? What if she failed? The questions piled up until the desire to play was buried under doubts and responsibilities, even now. She sometimes picked up her phone to watch videos of piano performances. People with amazing skills, fingers flying across the keys, music that made her heart ache and eyes water. She remembered that feeling, that thrill of playing something and feeling it in every part of her body. She missed it terribly, but she told herself it was a life she had left behind. The piano, the music, the joy, was all a memory now. At work, she often found herself daydreaming. She thought about the piano, the notes, the songs she used to play. She imagined sitting at the keys, the room silent except for her music. It was comforting, like visiting an old friend. Sometimes she would tap out rhythms on her desk when no one was looking. People might have thought she was fidgeting or distracted, but she was playing a private concert in her mind. The music was still alive inside her, even if the piano stayed silent. Some evenings, she walked through the park. She loved the sounds of the world, the wind rustling through the trees, birds singing, footsteps on gravel. It reminded her of rhythm, of timing, of the way music could follow life's patterns. She often stopped to listen to street performers, watching their fingers move across strings, keys, or drums. The skill, the passion, the joy, they stirred something deep inside her. She felt a longing that was almost painful, a reminder of what she had put aside. Her life felt small in some ways, but in others, it was full of quiet richness. She noticed the little things: light reflecting on the water, the laughter of a child, the smell of rain. She recorded them in her mind like musical notes, imagining how she would translate them into sound. Music was not gone from her life. It had simply shifted into memory, into observation, into longing. Evenings alone were the hardest. The silence pressed against her, making her aware of the piano in the corner. Sometimes she would sit near it, open the cover, and press a key gently. The sound rang out, pure and clear, and it startled her every time. She remembered the strength and emotion that music could carry. She touched more keys, forming a few notes, but always stopped herself. She feared judgment, failure, or the stirring of emotions too strong to handle. She often thought about the people around her, how they saw her as calm, even timid, never suspecting the depth of music inside her. If they could hear her play, they would be shocked. They would see someone vibrant, full of life, capable of beauty that words could never describe. But she did not play. She did not show that part of herself. The world knew only the quiet exterior, not the music that lived inside. Her days continued, repetitive, but not without small joys. A smile from a stranger, a warm drink on a cold day, a song on the radio that reminded her of childhood. These moments reminded her that life had beauty, and sometimes that beauty called for expression. She longed to release it, to show it, but the right moment never seemed to come. Yet she held on to hope. A small, quiet hope that one day the piano would no longer be just a memory, that one day she might sit down and let her fingers move freely again, letting the music flow. She did not know when, or where, or even if she would have the courage. But the hope was there, flickering like a candle in the dark, waiting for something to ignite it in her quiet moments. She sometimes whispered songs to herself, melodies that had lived in her mind for years. She imagined them played perfectly, each note carrying the emotion she could not always put into words. The piano was silent, but her music was not. It lived in her heart, waiting for a day when she could bring it back to life. Life was ordinary, yet it was also full of potential. She moved through her days with care, observing, noticing, remembering. Every little sound, every little rhythm, reminded her of the music inside. She felt ready, even if she did not know it yet, for the moment when someone would ask her to play, even something simple, and she would discover that her quiet life held a hidden brilliance. Her story had not yet begun, at least not in the way that mattered most. But she carried the beginnings inside her memories, skills, passion, and hope. She walked through the streets, carried out her daily tasks, and returned to her apartment. Always aware of the piano in the corner, it waited patiently like a friend who knew she would return when the time was right, and so she lived quietly, carefully, but with music alive in her heart. It was only a matter of time before the world would hear what had been waiting for so long. One ordinary afternoon, she found herself walking through the city streets after work. The sun was low, casting golden light on buildings and streets. She liked this time of day, when everything felt quiet but alive. People were leaving offices, heading home, talking and laughing. There was a gentle hum of life all around her. She wandered without much thought, letting her feet carry her where they wanted. Music was on her mind, as it often was. She imagined melodies in her head, little notes that made her smile. She felt a familiar longing. She turned a corner and saw a small cafe. It was cozy, with a few tables outside and warm light spilling through the windows. She felt a pull toward it, a curiosity she could not explain. Inside, the cafe was almost empty, except for a few customers quietly reading or sipping coffee. In one corner, she noticed a piano. It was polished, inviting, and she felt her heart skip a beat. The piano seemed to be waiting for someone, though she did not know why she felt it was waiting for her. A man behind the counter saw her looking at it. He smiled politely and said, "Would you like to play something? Something simple, just for fun?" The words were casual, almost careless, but they struck her like lightning. She froze, unsure how to respond. She had not played in years, not in front of anyone. The thought of touching the piano in public made her palms sweat. Her mind raced with doubts. What if she wasn't good enough? What if people laughed? What if she failed? She glanced around. Only a few people were there, some barely paying attention. It seemed safe. She nodded, almost without thinking. She walked toward the piano, each step heavy with anticipation. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the cover and sat down on the bench. The keys gleamed in the soft light. She placed her hands on them, feeling their cool surface. It felt like touching an old friend after many years apart. She began with a few notes, careful and small. The sound was quiet, simple, and exactly what had been asked. Her fingers moved cautiously, remembering the lessons of her childhood. She was aware of every little movement, every tiny sound. The cafe felt quiet. Even the people who were reading or talking seemed to notice, their attention subtly drawn to the piano in the corner. As she played, something shifted inside her. The simple melody she had chosen began to change. It grew richer, more expressive. Her emotions flowed into her hands, and the notes became something more than simple music. They became a story, a voice, a reflection of her life. She felt alive in a way she had not felt for years. Her heart raced, her mind cleared, and she lost herself in the music. People began to notice. A couple at a table stopped talking. A man with a laptop lifted his head. Even the barista behind the counter paused, watching quietly. The music was not just sound. It was emotion, carrying feelings that words could never describe. She was not performing, not thinking about showing off. She was simply playing, letting her feelings move through her fingers and fill the room. A few notes were hesitant, shaky, but she kept going. Each mistake did not matter. She corrected herself, guided by the feeling of the music rather than rules or expectation. The simple request had become something much more. It was as if the piano had remembered her, as if it knew her secret longing and wanted to help her express it. She played with abandon, yet with control, and the cafe became silent, captivated by the music. Time seemed to stretch. She lost track of minutes, of people, of the world outside. There was only the piano, the music, and her. The melodies that had lived inside her for years found a way to breathe. The emotions she had kept hidden found their way into every note. Happiness, sorrow, longing, hope, they all danced together on the keys. The people in the cafe felt it, though they did not understand its source. It was impossible not to feel moved. She looked around briefly, seeing the expressions of people who had stopped to listen. Some had tears in their eyes, some smiled gently, and some just sat in awe. She realized that even though she had been hesitant, even though she had feared judgment, she had touched something real in their hearts. Music had done what it always did, connected people, told stories, spoke truths that words could not. As she continued to play, she felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. Her heart pounded, not because of nervousness, but because of joy. She remembered why she had loved music so much. It was not about perfection or recognition. It was about truth, expression, and freedom. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. The simple request that had seemed almost insignificant had become something extraordinary. She was not thinking about the past, the future, or what anyone would say. She was in the moment, completely and utterly herself. Each chord, each note, each pause carried meaning. She realized that the music was a bridge between who she had been, who she was, and who she could become. Some people had started recording with their phones, but she did not care. She played not for them, not for applause or attention, but for herself. The music was a part of her soul, and it had found its voice again. She felt tears in her eyes, but she did not stop. There was no shame, no embarrassment, only the joy of creation, the thrill of rediscovery. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The melody she had begun as simple had transformed into something deeper, richer, more alive. She explored harmonies, played with rhythm, and allowed her emotions to guide her hands. She felt as though she were telling a story without words, sharing her heart with anyone who would listen. The music was not just for the cafe. It was for herself, for the life she had almost forgotten. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence. The room held its breath, and she felt her chest heaving, her hands trembling. People slowly began to clap softly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. She looked up, surprised. She had not expected this reaction, had not expected anyone to care so much. The smiles, the gentle nods, the tears in eyes, it all felt overwhelming. She realized that the quiet life she had been living had not been unnoticed. Her music had made an impact, even without her saying a word. The barista approached, smiling warmly. "That was beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you for sharing that with us." She nodded, unable to speak at first. Her heart was full, her mind buzzing. She had been asked to play something simple, and in doing so, she had created something that touched everyone in the room. It was a small moment, yet it felt monumental. It reminded her of the power that music held, the truth that she had always known but had forgotten in daily life. As she packed up, people approached her quietly. They complimented her, asked questions, and some even told her how much it meant to them. She smiled, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. For the first time in years, she felt seen, heard, and understood. The music had done what she had feared she could not do. It had bridged the gap between her inner world and the outside world. Walking home that evening, she felt different. Lightness filled her step, and a smile lingered on her face. She thought about the piano waiting at home, the possibilities that lay ahead. The simple request had unlocked something she had not realized was still alive within her. She was no longer just a quiet observer of life. She had rediscovered her voice, her power, and her joy. That day in the cafe had started as an ordinary moment. A casual request, a simple question, had changed everything. She realized that sometimes life presents opportunities in small, unexpected ways. She learned that courage is not always loud or bold. It can be gentle, quiet, and deeply personal. And she knew that this was only the beginning of something extraordinary that awaited her. A journey that would reconnect her with the music, the world, and herself, as she continued to play. The simple melody she had started with began to grow. Her fingers moved more confidently now, following the emotions that flowed naturally. Each note carried a story, a piece of herself that she had long kept hidden. The cafe, once quiet and ordinary, transformed into a space filled with life through her music. The sound filled every corner. Wrapping around the few patrons and drawing their attention completely, her hands seemed to have a mind of their own. They moved effortlessly, creating harmonies she had not planned. The music became more than just notes, it became a reflection of her soul. Each chord resonated with memories she had tucked away, some happy, some sad, some full of longing. She felt every emotion as she played, and with each note, she let herself go deeper into the music. People in the cafe could not take their eyes off her. The couple sitting at a table leaned forward, their conversation forgotten. The man with the laptop closed it slowly, his fingers resting on the edge as he listened. Even the barista, who had been busy preparing drinks, paused completely, captivated by the sound. There was something magnetic about the way she played, something that held the attention of everyone present without a word. The melody began to shift. What started as a gentle, simple tune now carried layers of emotion and complexity. Her fingers danced across the keys, creating patterns that were intricate yet natural. She played with intensity and tenderness at the same time, as if she were speaking directly to each person in the room. The music was a bridge, connecting her heart to everyone who could hear. She remembered the times when she had played alone in her room, the hours spent perfecting scales and practicing small pieces. But this was different. She was no longer practicing. She was creating. She was expressing the depth of her feelings in real time, and it felt liberating. The fear that had held her back for years seemed to dissolve with every note. She realized that the music had always been inside her, waiting for a moment like this to emerge. Her emotions flowed freely. She allowed herself to feel every sadness, every joy, every hope that she had suppressed for so long. The music carried all of it, and the cafe seemed to respond. The patrons leaned in, some closing their eyes to fully absorb the sound. Tears glistened in the eyes of a few, while others smiled, feeling a connection they could not explain. The energy in the room shifted, as if her music had created a temporary world, where only beauty and emotion existed. She did not notice how long she'd been playing. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, though she did not care about time. She was lost in the rhythm, the melodies, and the emotions that guided her. Every note was intentional, yet spontaneous, a perfect balance between control and freedom. She was in her element. It was clear to everyone present that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Her breathing became slower, more deliberate as she immersed herself in the music. The cafe, once just a place to sip coffee and chat, had become a sanctuary. Every sound outside, every movement of people faded into the background. Only the music mattered. Only the connection between her and the piano. And through the piano, the connection to the people listening. As she played, she began to feel a sense of release. Years of self-doubt, fear, and silence seemed to evaporate with each passing note. She remembered the joy of playing as a child, the feeling of possibility that music had always given her. That feeling returned now, stronger than ever, but richer because it was intertwined with her experiences, her struggles, and the life she had lived. She began to experiment, pushing the boundaries of the simple tune she had been asked to play. The melody transformed into something complex, yet it remained beautiful and accessible. Her hands moved in a flow that was both precise and fluid, creating a tapestry of sound that seemed to resonate in every corner of the room. The cafe had become a stage, but she did not feel like a performer. She felt like herself, fully and completely. People could not help but be drawn into the music. A woman sitting near the window leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands, completely absorbed. A man who had been reading a book closed it gently and let the music wash over him. Even a small child who had wandered in with a parent stopped to listen, eyes wide with wonder. There was an unspoken understanding among the listeners. They were witnessing something rare, something real, something profound. She felt a connection with them, even though she did not know any of them. The music was a language that transcended words. She realized that her playing had the power to touch hearts, to evoke emotions, and to create shared experiences. It was a reminder of why she had loved music in the first place, why she had dedicated so much of her life to learning it. Even if she had stopped for years, the dynamics of the piece shifted naturally. Soft, delicate passages flowed into powerful, resonant chords. She used pauses to create tension, allowing the silence between notes to speak as loudly as the notes themselves. She felt the energy of the room and let it guide her, adjusting her tempo and intensity without conscious thought. It was a conversation between her, the piano, and the audience. A dialogue that required no words. Every once in a while, she glanced around to see the reactions of the listeners. She noticed a man with tears in his eyes, a woman who seemed lost in thought, and the barista, who was smiling with quiet admiration. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and humility. She was sharing something deeply personal, yet it had the power to reach beyond her own experience and touch others in ways she could not have imagined. Her body moved with the music, swaying gently, leaning into each phrase, allowing the emotions to guide her posture and expression. She was fully present, aware of every sound, every resonance, every vibration of the keys beneath her fingers. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was an extension of her soul, a conduit through which she could communicate what words could not convey. The music continued to evolve, growing more intricate and layered. She explored harmonies and counterpoints that she had never played in public before, drawing from her memory and intuition. The complexity of the piece did not make it inaccessible. Rather, it made it more compelling, more alive. She felt exhilarated, thrilled by the realization that her skills, her emotions, and her creativity were fully aligned in this moment. She noticed that the cafe had fallen completely silent, except for the sound of her music. Even the hum of the city outside seemed distant. It was as if time had slowed, as if the world outside had paused to listen. The patrons were captivated, fully immersed, and she felt a sense of shared presence with them. The music had created a temporary community, united by the beauty and truth of what she was expressing. As the piece reached its climax, she allowed herself to pour everything she had into it. Every note carried intention and feeling. The sound was powerful, resonant, and full of life. She felt her heart racing, a combination of excitement and release. The music had become a vessel for her emotions, a way to release what she had held inside for so long. It was a moment of triumph, not over others, but over her own doubts and fears. Gradually, she began to bring the piece to a close. The final notes lingered in the air, soft and gentle, as if reluctant to leave. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, of completeness. She had started with something simple, but she had created something extraordinary. The music had become a reflection of her life, her experiences, and her emotions. It had become a masterpiece, even if only for those who were there to witness it. When the last note faded, the room remained silent for a moment, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began to rise. It was soft at first, then growing in intensity. She looked up, surprised, overwhelmed, and deeply moved. The people who had been watching her were smiling, some wiping tears from their eyes, others nodding in appreciation. Their reactions were genuine, heartfelt. She felt a warmth spread through her chest. The barista approached again, smiling warmly. "That was incredible," he said. "Thank you for sharing that with us." She nodded, unable to find words immediately. Her hands were still resting on the keys, trembling slightly from the intensity of the performance. She felt a mixture of humility, pride, and joy. She had been asked to play something simple, and she had created something that moved people, something that mattered. As she packed her things and prepared to leave, the patrons continued to speak quietly among themselves, clearly discussing the performance. She realized that even though she had feared showing herself, even though she had doubted her abilities, the music had spoken for her. It had revealed her heart, her talent, and her passion in a way that words never could. Walking home that evening, she felt lighter, freer, and more alive than she had in years. The simple act of playing had reminded her of who she was, what she was capable of, and of the power of music to connect and inspire. She knew that this was only the beginning of something greater, a journey back into the life she had once loved and had almost forgotten. The music continued, more powerful than before. She felt every note vibrating through her body, every chord carrying emotion she had kept inside for years. The cafe was no longer just a place to sit and drink coffee. It had become a sanctuary, a space where her feelings could be heard without judgment. She was no longer playing for herself alone, nor only for the few people in the room. She was playing for the life she had almost forgotten, for the joy she had set aside, for the power of music itself. Her fingers flew across the keys, faster, yet precise. Each note seemed to tell a story, a chapter of her life, of dreams she had long kept secret. The room seemed to lean in, to breathe with her. She could feel the energy of the audience, the way their hearts moved in rhythm with her music. It was not about impressing anyone. It was about expressing everything she had held inside. Every joy, every sorrow, every longing poured into the sound. She allowed herself to explore the piano fully. She played with abandon, letting her emotions guide her hands. The melody twisted and turned, shifting from soft, delicate notes to bold, resonant chords that filled the entire space. She felt alive, as if the piano and her soul had merged into one instrument, creating music that was raw, honest, and unforgettable. Some of the patrons could not believe what they were hearing. A few held their hands over their mouths, eyes wide. Others had tears streaming down their faces. The music spoke to them in ways words never could. It carried feelings they had never fully understood, moments of sadness, hope, love, and loss. She played not just for herself, but for every person listening, for every story they carried in their hearts. She remembered the long years she had spent doubting herself, hiding her talent, fearing judgment. But now, all those fears seemed meaningless. The music had freed her. Each note reminded her of her strength, her resilience, and her capacity to create beauty even in silence. It was a transformation not only for the listeners but for her as well. She felt lighter, freer, and more alive than she had in years. Her music became more intricate, yet every note was clear and intentional. She experimented with timing, with pauses, with dynamics. Sometimes a soft whisper-like passage would give way to a thunderous cascade of chords, startling and enchanting all at once. She felt completely in control, yet also completely surrendered to the emotions that guided her. It was as if the piano itself was alive, responding to her feelings, helping her tell a story bigger than words. The cafe seemed to disappear around her. The walls, the tables, the city outside all faded. There was only her, the piano, and the audience. And even the audience seemed to fade in a sense, becoming part of the music, part of the story she was telling. She could see them, yes, but they were not distractions. They were witnesses, participants, receivers of a message carried in every chord. Every melody, every pause, her heart raced, but it was not fear, it was exhilaration. She felt the power of music, the way it could lift spirits, bring tears, spark memories, and connect strangers. She felt alive in a way she had never known, as if every heartbeat was perfectly synchronized with the rhythm of the piano. It was not just sound. It was life itself, flowing through her, through the keys, into the room. She noticed a young man sitting at the back, tears rolling down his cheeks. A woman by the window pressed her hands together, silently moved by the intensity. Even the barista had stopped everything, leaning on the counter, smiling softly. She realized that her music was touching each person in a personal way. She did not know their stories, yet her playing resonated with their hearts. That realization filled her with a profound sense of connection and purpose. She allowed herself to become vulnerable, letting the music reveal her deepest emotions. She played not for applause, not for recognition, but because it was who she was. Every chord was a confession, every melody a truth she had carried silently for years. The power of the music came from its honesty, from its refusal to hide or conform. It was raw, unfiltered, and beautiful. The tempo changed naturally as she played, sometimes slow, reflective, almost fragile, sometimes fast, exuberant, and forceful. She explored the full range of her skill, the depth of her emotion, and the vastness of her imagination. She felt a sense of liberation unlike anything she had experienced. It was as if all the moments she had lost, all the chances she had missed, were being reclaimed in that single performance. Her fingers moved instinctively, almost as if guided by something beyond her conscious thought. Every chord, every note, every pause felt exactly right. She was in perfect harmony with herself, with the piano, with the space around her. It was not perfection in the technical sense, but perfection in expression. It was music that lived, breathed, and spoke from the heart. The audience could feel it. They leaned in, held their breath, and allowed themselves to be carried by the waves of sound. Some wept quietly, others smiled with understanding, and a few closed their eyes, completely lost in the moment. The power of her music had transformed the room, creating a shared experience of emotion and beauty. It was impossible to remain untouched by it. She played the final sections with deliberate intensity, allowing the music to build, swell, and soar. Each note was full of meaning, carrying the weight of years, of memories, of emotions she had kept hidden. The melody rose to a climax that seemed to fill not just the cafe, but her entire being. She felt complete, as if every doubt, every fear, every hesitation had been washed away by the music. When the last note finally faded, the silence that followed was almost overwhelming. It was as if the room was holding its breath, reluctant to let go of the spell she had created. Then, slowly, softly at first, applause began. It grew louder, heartfelt, and genuine. She looked up, her hands still resting on the keys, and felt a surge of emotion that matched the music she had just played. She had shared something deeply personal, and the response was more than she had imagined. People approached her quietly, expressing gratitude, awe, and admiration. A few whispered how moved they were, how the music had spoken to them in ways they could not explain. She felt humbled, touched, and a little overwhelmed. She realized that she had not just played for herself, but had touched the lives of others. The simple request to play something had led to a moment of shared beauty, emotion, and connection. As she gathered her things, she felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had discovered that her music, her passion, her expression, had the power to transform not only her life, but also the lives of those who listened. The fear and doubt that had once held her back seemed distant now, replaced by confidence, joy, and a sense of purpose. She walked home that evening with light steps, her heart full. Knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey that had the potential to change everything, she reflected on the experience as she passed through the streets. The ordinary world felt different now, infused with possibility. She realized that moments like this, expected small at first, yet profound, could transform life in ways one never expected. A simple request, a quiet action, had led to an extraordinary experience, reminding her of the beauty, power, and potential that lay within herself. The piano at home awaited her. But she knew that what mattered most was not the instrument, but the music inside her. The music was alive, vibrant, and unstoppable. It had found its voice again, and she had discovered hers. Life, once quiet and ordinary, now held promise and excitement. She understood that this moment was a turning point, a beginning of a path that would allow her to fully embrace her talent, her emotions, and her connection to the world through music. After the music ended, the cafe remained quiet for a few moments, as if no one wanted to break the spell. She sat there, hands resting on the piano, breathing slowly, letting the sound of the final notes fade. Her heart still raced, a mixture of exhilaration, relief, and wonder. She had done something extraordinary without intending to. She had allowed herself to be fully seen and heard, and the world had responded with warmth and appreciation. People began to approach her, quietly at first, almost cautiously, as if afraid to disturb the magic that had been created. They thanked her, smiled, and shared how deeply moved they were. A few admitted that they had never expected a simple tune to carry such depth of feeling. Some spoke about how it had reminded them of their own memories, their own joys and sorrows. The connection that had formed in those few minutes was real and tangible. It was more than music. It was human connection at its purest. She listened to them with a smile, feeling humbled and touched. She realized that her quiet life, the years of holding herself back, had not erased her power to move others. Music had always been her voice, even when she was silent. And now it had found its way back, stronger and more alive than ever. She felt a sense of purpose stir inside her, a feeling she had almost forgotten amidst the routines of daily life. The barista, who had been watching quietly the entire time, came closer and said, "You have a gift. Thank you for sharing it with us." She nodded, words failing her for a moment. It was strange to hear acknowledgement like that after years of hiding, of thinking no one cared, of believing her talent was only hers to keep. Now, she understood that her music had the power to reach people, to touch hearts, and to inspire emotions beyond words. After leaving the cafe, she walked home slowly, reflecting on what had just happened. The city streets, familiar yet ordinary, now seemed brighter, filled with potential. Every sound, every shadow, every passing face seemed different, as if the world itself had shifted slightly because she had finally let herself shine. She felt lighter, freer, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The music she had once thought lost was alive again, and with it came a renewed sense of confidence and joy. That evening at her apartment, she sat by her own piano, the one that had been silent for years. She opened the cover, touched the keys, and remembered the feeling of her fingers moving across them. The memory of the cafe performance, the emotions she had expressed, and the response she had received all came rushing back. She began to play, softly at first, just exploring the notes, letting her fingers find familiar melodies. Each sound was a reminder of what she was capable of and of the joy that music brought her. Her music became a conversation with herself, with her past, and with the life she wanted to live. She played through memories of childhood, of moments when she had felt unstoppable, of times when she had hidden her talent out of fear. Each note was a step toward reclaiming the person she had been and embracing the person she could become. The piano was no longer a silent witness to her life. It was a partner in her journey, helping her express everything she had kept locked away. Over the next few days, she found herself thinking about the cafe constantly. She remembered the faces of the people who had listened, the emotions in their eyes, the quiet awe that had filled the room. She realized that she wanted to share her music more, to let it reach others who might need it, who might be moved or inspired by it. The idea filled her with excitement and purpose. She no longer wanted to hide or play small. She wanted to explore the possibilities that lay ahead. She began to practice daily, not out of obligation, but out of joy. She experimented with melodies, created new arrangements, and allowed her emotions to guide her compositions. Every session at the piano became an adventure, a way to reconnect with herself and the world. She felt her confidence grow, not in a boastful way, but in a quiet, steady realization that her talent and her passion were valuable and needed. Friends and neighbors began to notice a change in her. She seemed more alive, more present, more joyful. Her smiles were genuine, her movements lighter, and her conversations more animated. People asked about her newfound energy, and though she did not always explain, they could sense the shift. Music had not only transformed her performances, but had transformed her entire being. It was a reminder that the things we love most can also be the things that heal us, shape us, and give us purpose. She also realized that fear and doubt, which had held her back for so long, were not permanent. They could be overcome moment by moment, with courage and action. The cafe experience had shown her that even a small step, it's like agreeing to play something simple, could lead to extraordinary results. It was a lesson she carried with her, reminding her that life was full of unexpected opportunities, and that embracing them could lead to growth, fulfillment, and joy. As weeks passed, she began to seek out other small opportunities to share her music. She played at local gatherings, small events, and even casually in public spaces where people could stop and listen. Each performance, no matter how brief or simple, reinforced the lesson she had learned in the cafe, that music was a powerful form of expression and connection. She felt increasingly confident, empowered, and motivated to continue exploring her talent and sharing it with the world. One evening, as she returned from a small performance at a community event, she reflected on her journey. She realized that she had grown tremendously, not just in skill, but in understanding herself, her emotions, and her purpose. Music had been a constant companion, waiting patiently for her to return. And now it was a source of joy, expression, and connection that could not be silenced.